Hello and welcome to the West London Sport QPR podcast with me, David McIntyre, and former QPR striker Kevin Gallen. We're recording this not long after the 4-1 debacle against Middlesbrough. Kev, I suppose there's a danger of repeating ourselves and going over old ground. We've talked about the recruitment and our reservations about various things. Talk to me about the Middlesbrough game and what you saw there and how it ties in with what you've been seeing so far this season.
Well, I went to the game on Tuesday night against Middlesbrough, and I have to say I was shocked about how bad it was. It was especially the first half. I mean, at half time, I was so frustrated. I spoke to a lot of QPR fans and they asked me what I thought. I told them, I'm going to tell you now. We've got a severe lack of pace in the team, real pace, especially in midfield. We get overrun in midfield a lot. We also, I feel, we don't really know how to play out from the back. And I don't think we've got the players, other than when Jake Clark sort of plays, who's very comfortable in possession of the ball. Steve Cook, great defender. He ain't a ball playing centre half. He's come in there. He's done well, captain, leader. Probably the only one who really comes out every game with a 6, 7 out of 10 steady performance. But he ain't great on the ball. Jimmy Dunn isn't great on the ball. So when we do play out from the back, we end up sort of lumping it forward because there's no sort of options. There's no real quality of anyone coming to receive the ball in midfield, to play through those thirds, those middle thirds and get up and get forward. And then if the opposition team squeeze right up, we then try and go long. And the only one we can really go long to is Jimmy Dunn, who pushes into a right midfield area. Salah at the moment is absolutely miles off it. I mean, I'm not over-exaggerating. If you ask any, I'm sitting in the stands and, the fans ain't stupid. They can see it. And the thing is, when the ball does get played up to him long, he never wins a header. He never links the play up. He never holds it up so the whole midfield and the whole team can move and get up the pitch and then play in their half. So I feel that is a big problem. The style of play or what the manager wants to do. I assume the manager wants to play out from the back. Middlesbrough were very good at it. They done it literally every time, and they got out. And when they got out, they were on top of us running. It was like 5 marching towards our goal, and they were very good at it. But I just don't feel we have the centre backs or the defenders to play that way. But then also, I don't think we have the striker to go long and hit. Michael Frey would be a much better option, but he's injured. But as I said before, and I've said this, Michael Frey, for all his attitude and energy, for me, Michael Frey should be your number 3 centre forwards in going into a season. And coming on a sub and coming on when QPR are 0-0 and 20 minutes, you're kicking down to the loft and you need a goal and you want to throw the ball in the box more often, put balls in the box and cause havoc. So that's where we are. I mean, I've said it again, going into the season with 2 centre forwards, I said it at the time, I can't get my head around it. It's just an absolute lack of, brains really. That's the only word I can say of going into a season with 2 centre forwards. One's injured. That can always happen. You have one could be really out of form, and then you've got. Do you know what I mean? You've got 2. You've got to have 3 or 4 at least. Michael Frey's injured. Salah is. I don't know if he's out of form because I haven't seen him play well yet. He hasn't set the world alight at all. So we're now, waiting and hoping on Michael Frey to come back. Last season, we had Lyndon Dykes, Frey, Sinclair Armstrong. You had some options, and with Sinclair Armstrong, you had some running options, and you had something for the last 20 minutes of the game. So at the moment, I think there's a lot wrong with QPR at the moment, and I think it's going to be a tough season. And as usual, as we always say, we're going to get to January, Dave, and it's going to be who we're going to sign, and we need some players in quick. But it happens every transfer window. Every transfer window is for us is to save the season. So yeah, it's going to be a tough few months until January.
That is the case, isn't it? With QPR, every single transfer window is all the more vital, all the more life-changing than the last one. It's just a cycle that just goes round and round and round, and obviously the club's heading for that exact same situation again. I mean, in terms of the players brought in the summer, I mean, you and I expressed some scepticism both about the methods that they were signed by and the actual signings. I mean, we've got to talk about Nicholas Madsen and that performance, or I think non-performance would be a better way of putting it, against Middlesbrough. I mean, Kev, what the hell was that about?
Well, someone put up some stats yesterday on X, and he didn't make a tackle in the whole I think it was on 85 minutes. I mean, for a centre midfielder, that's just not on. You know, I mean, I can imagine Steve Cook after the game looking at him and the senior players, and like Jimmy Dunn and Field, who actually, you know, whatever limitations, they do have a go and they do try and get stuck in. And you know, you can forgive the odd bad pass, but you can't forgive a lack of effort. I mean, not making a tackle as a midfielder, that seems to me is a severe lack of effort and desire, energy, aggressiveness. Because at the end of the day, you know, the best teams of the world, and I mean, the best team, you know, in the last 5-6 years has been Man City, and they're off the ball. They're the best team as well as on the ball. They hunt and they close and they win the ball back early. I mean, for a centre midfield player who supposedly costs €4 million or £3.5 million, and I don't even know how long the deal is because we're not allowed to know. But you know, you hear rumours 4 or 5 year deal. I mean, he needs to really liven up, and the manager will. I mean, the manager will not be happy with a centre midfielder. I mean, no one's happy. The team, the manager, he needs to improve. I mean, that is a 1 or 2 out of 10 performance. You know, you need to get to, even if you're having a poor game on the ball, you need to still be working your socks off for the team. I just look at him, and I actually, you just don't notice him because he's not doing anything, and he's so languid. You just think there's a severe, I don't think it's fitness, but it's a severe lack of energy and desire, and he needs to get his act together quick.
Yeah, I mean, again, danger of repeating ourselves, but what was the feedback we were getting on him, Kev, in the summer from people in the game who actually watch players rather than relying on data? You know, what were we told? We were told he was weak, he was slow, and he wasn't going to be cut out for Championship football. Other clubs looked at this guy, you know, they looked at him, they considered him, and that was the verdict on him. And so far, and another thing as well, it's an appalling stat that he's not put a tackle in, but it's not like he's compensated for it in any other way. You know, he can ping a pass around, and he did so the other night, but nowhere near enough. It's not like he's compensating for the lack of tackling with creativity, forward runs, passing, etc. There was just nothing.
It was absolutely nothing. And the first 25 minutes, 30 minutes, you're thinking, oh, are we the away team here? Middlesbrough, like, I mean, the amount of time they had on the ball, it's like some stages of the game, it's like a testimonial where, you know, you have the ball and do what you want with it, and we'll just not close you down. Yeah, it's very worrying. I mean, I did ask fellow scouts about him, and basically what they said was he can ping a ball about. He scored 10, 11 goals last season, but I think 8 or 9 of them were from penalties. So, I mean, that should be up on the data stats, really. So, I just basically a lack of he doesn't look strong in the tackle. I mean, and I'm talking about Salah as well. When the ball goes in the channel you're chasing, they seem to be jogging with the opposition. You need to be getting your arm across, and that was with Santos at left back. Just get your arm across and don't jog with the bloke. Put your arm across and put him off. Even little tugs, and like Steve Cook and Jimmy Dunn, they ain't quicker than Santos, or do you know what I mean? But Jimmy Dunn and whatever the failings are, Steve Cook, they'd have their body in the way. They'd be blocking before he even gets the ball. And it's just a lack of sort of football intelligence of knowing what to do on the pitch when the going gets tough. We actually look very naive. And Middlesbrough very, I'm not going to say the word, but it begins with a thing, housery. They killed the game. They took, I mean, the referee, I thought he should have booked 4 or 5. They took so long with their throw-ins. They took so long with their goal kicks. You're like, we don't do that. We got no one to, like, there's no, like, other than the captain, it's just, everyone looked a bit naive.
Kev, now that it's November and we've had time to look at these players, I'd make 1 or 2 observations about them and I'll be interested in whether you agree with them or not. I don't see any scenario where Nicholas Madsen and Sella can play in the way that they do, what they appears to be their natural game, and for it to work for them in English football. Players can have stinkers, they can have bad spells, they can learn things, they can adapt, and things can start, going in the right direction for them. It can happen. Form can go up and down. But I don't see any scenario in which Nicholas Madsen can be Nicholas Madsen as he is, and the same with Sella, and it falls into place for them in English football. You just can't do what they want to do in the Championship and in English football. There is simply no niche for players like that over here. You mentioned Man City, even the best teams, Liverpool, Man City, the level of athleticism, etc., etc. Varane, you can see that he's got some physicality about him. He's got some ability. He's got the legs. There's a question mark over his passing, and certainly whether he can pass forward. And you might have some views on that. But the same can be said about a lot of players, including Isaac Hayden, by the way. But those two, Madsen and Sella, they cannot keep doing what they're trying to do and have things fall into place for them. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I'm not going to say never, son, but 9 times out of 10, you're right. I'm not going to say you never, but I agree totally. I mean, at the moment, can't really see how they can turn it around. I really hope I'm wrong. I just can't see it. And the reasons why, just a lack of real aggression. I mean, Sella, you're a number 9. You need to put yourself about. You need to, even if you don't get any chances, be a handful. Just knock into some centre-halves. Don't let him have a free ride. Madsen is playing like he's training. Like he's playing in like testimonials every time I see him play. He's playing like a testimonial. Varane, different. You'll see on Saturday, probably Varane might have a good game because QPR will sit back and they'll play a back 5 at the back and a 4 and a 1, and you'll just sit and he'll block and there'll be no space. But the problem for me with Varane and his passing is when you've got to win a game at home, which is going to come up, I think, as our next home game, Stoke. I think that's right. If we don't get any results in the next, against Leeds, which is going to be tough, if you're at home and you've got to win a game, and these are the tough games for QPR. And it is when we were playing, especially when we were in League One, where we were the favourites, and teams come and they sit back, and you have to break them down. You have to, as Varane you will have the ball. You will have to start finding some passes. You have to start creating some stuff. And at the moment, every time I see him get the ball, he usually has his back towards, he usually comes in square instead of on the half turn, and he just passes it back to the centre halves all the time. He has no awareness of what's behind him at the moment. He needs to improve and be, it's not even coach, he just needs to improve. Basically, you can't come on flat, you've got to come on an angle, you've got to receive the ball on the back foot and be aware if there's anyone behind you. At the moment, he gets the ball, passes it back. Even when he does face forward, he hesitates. And there is actually a school of thought that there's not many options for him. And I agree, maybe with the centre forward, he's not showing at all, and Madsen was hiding. But even then, he has 1 or 2 seconds, especially in the first half on Tuesday, and he just turns back and passes it either square or backwards. Regarding the left back on Tuesday, Santos was, he should have been maybe taken off after 20 minutes because the Middlesbrough winger just had him on toast, and it was just a matter of time when he did get past him, because he was getting past him all the time, that he would find the right ball for them to score, and he did. and then the second goal comes down his side. I know he's a right back, but Jimmy Dunn's ahead of him at right back. They brought in Ashby, another right back, ahead of him, and I think there's a lad they bought from Hearts. Is that right?
Yeah.
As a right back.
Rocco Friel,
yeah. So we've got 4 right backs, but 1 left back. Again, recruitment is all over the place. So it's tough for Madsen and Silla to pull this round. I agree with you. I will never say never, but it's going to be very tough for them to pull this round.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, say, a good few years, someone like probably my favourite ever QPR player, Roy Wegley, there was the ultimate flair player. There was the ultimate player who the old school managers would have had a go at, who, wasn't going to track back, wasn't going to do this, wasn't going to do that. And he didn't have a very good start, Kev. You'll remember it. He was the first £1 million QPR player. He didn't have a good start. But you could tell, even in his own way, even being Roy Wegley, the flair player, that he had an appetite about him, that he wanted to impress. And in his own way, he worked hard. And when things weren't going well for him, you could see the effort, you could see the disappointment. It just wasn't falling into place for him. And I think you made the point with some of these new guys. Whatever style of player you are, when you join a new club, surely that is the point. It may not go well for you, but that is the point where you're going to look up for it. Particularly if you're a striker, you're going to make the runs. You want to make the impression. It's just not there.
So when I've been a new player at many different clubs, and the first 4 or 5 games, you're trying to impress not only the manager, but your teammates, the crowd. So you usually are running around like a blue heart. Do you know what I mean? Like a fly. You're like a fly. You're chasing everything. And then after 5 or 6 games, you sort of get to your level, and hopefully it goes and you stay at your 7, your 8, whatever, if you're lucky. They haven't even started well. So how is it going to get any better? But I'm not going to write anyone off just yet, because I don't want to get it on my face when it all comes good, Dave.
Right, I mean, I wouldn't write them off. I still think there's a possibility. There's always a possibility that things can turn for a player. But what I'm saying is, it's not going to turn from them. It's not going to turn for them in their current form, doing what they seem to want to do. I don't see how it turns around for a Nicholas Madsen of that type. I just don't think that there's a place in our game for players who play like that. I mean, if you take someone like Fowling, for example. Now, I know he's a huge favourite among QPR fans, and at times I could be a little bit critical of him, and I got a bit of stick for that, because my take on him was that, well, I knew that other clubs, rightly or wrongly, saw him as a potential weak link that you could get off his shoulder a little bit, and he wasn't that aware of what was going on defensively some of the time. But the thing about him was he had what so many of his players of that type don't have. He had a final ball. Again and again, he would create something. He would get in the box himself and score a goal, or he would create something for someone else. The bad side of his game was offset by the positive side of his game. I just don't see a route for someone like Madsen.
Yeah,
and so
so there's like a school of thought with managers and coaches. It's like, be good. If you're really good at one thing, like excellent at one thing, it can sort of get away from being good at everything. A prime example was Andy Thompson at QPR, who scored goals, couldn't hold it up, couldn't run in the channel, but could nick a goal. And I played up front with him, and I got on well with him. A great guy, and I used to be having a word with him and giving it. Are you gonna run the channel? Are you gonna hold it up? Because that's all I'm doing. And you're like in the box, not nicking all goals, but he weren't doing anything other than, but he was good at it. And I agree with what you're saying. Be good at one. If you're really good at one thing, it can get you so far in football.
But you mentioned Thompson, but he still moved though, didn't he, Thompson, to get those chances?
Great movement in the box and for reading things, and he was excellent at that. There's no doubt about it. But he had no interest of coming short and late and holding it up. No interest of running in the channels, but his brain in the box was very good. But then it goes back. I mean, we haven't talked about, like, we started the season, was it a 4-3-3? We're now gone sort of to a back 5. I don't know. It's like a hybrid. I don't know if Jimmy Dunn's a right side centre half or a right back. I don't actually know, but it looked to me it was a three at the back. But what we're doing, we're still conceding loads of goals.
Yeah, I mean, the worrying one, well, they've all been worrying, but a particularly worrying one for me, I think, was the Portsmouth game, because there was a change of formation there. And you and I both expected a win in the Portsmouth game. And I especially did after the change of formation, because I'm a great believer that if you do that, you really do put your opponent on the rack, because what you have there, and you often see a false dawn after a change of formation, where you change the system, you get a couple of good results. And I often find myself saying, that tends to be a short-term thing, because what you've done is you've caught your opposition out because you're doing something that is completely different to the reports that the manager has got on his desk about what you do. Once you get to a point where managers are starting to get reports on what you're doing, then it's much more of a challenge. So you play Portsmouth, they're bottom of the table, you change the system, you go a goal up, and you still lose the game. I mean, that is pretty catastrophic there. And like you said, they're in a position now where it's, I suppose the question is, what do you do from here? I mean, how would you play it, Kev? Because you've also got to factor in that so many players are unavailable at the moment. The injury problems is making it difficult. The change of formation is partly down to that. They're almost completely out of options on the left at the moment. The word is that I think Morgan Fox will be back soon. But
David, just one before that, the options. I mean, on Tuesday, the options, from the bench was. I mean, I'm looking at QPR's bench and I'm thinking, how we can't. This can't be changed. I mean, we had a little go, but there's nothing there where you say bring him on ASAP. Where do we go from here? Saturday they'll play a 5 and a 4 and a 1, and I think the 1 will be Alfie Lloyd, because he'll give you some energy and he'll run. Because we're gonna do what we did against Burnley. We're gonna play so deep on the edge of our box, which suits our defenders. Because Steve Cook suits him, everything in front of him, no spacing behind. Same with Jimmy Dunn. I don't know if who's available. But this is the thing, is when we go and play Stoke at home, we can't play like that because the fans will not accept it. They won't accept us sitting back at home against a team who, we shouldn't be sitting at the back of it. But at the end of the day, look, we need a win. We need points. We're 5 points adrift already. We're playing Leeds on Saturday. Now, what do I think against Leeds? At best, 0-0. That's the best case scenario, because they're going to try and do what we did against Burnley. And I watched that game, and even though it was a fantastic point, it wasn't entertaining. I mean, it was, I'm sitting here watching it at home thinking, wow, I've just sort of half wasted my afternoon here. So where do we go from here? It's a real tough decision. I mean, the manager's got some real problems and real tough decisions to make over the next few weeks.
Just finally, what do you make of the manager? I mean, he's got some credit in the bank with the fans, so I think others are maybe getting more criticism than him. Are you on board with him still at the moment?
It's difficult because I think he's been served up. Players, not sure. See, this is the thing. We don't get any info. Who actually is signing the players? Who actually is it? Is it a collaboration of the director of football and CEO, the head of recruitment and the manager, or is it the head of recruitment and the CEO? Are they the ones that say, "There you go, there's your players"?
I mean,
you're the coach. There you go. But I can't get over how we can go into a season with 1 left back, 2 centre forwards. I just, you've got to have cover in these positions. Maybe they thought Morgan Fox was the cover left back, but he's been injury prone even last season. So the 2 centre forwards is just mind-boggling for me.
What I would say about that is I think you end up signing a player like Salah because you're looking to sign a striker. So you end up going down your list of targets. And if you bring in another striker in addition, you're going even further down the list than setup.
Got you.
So you're not potentially going to improve things too much just by bringing in another body. In terms of the recruitment, yeah, I mean, look, it's led by the head of recruitment and the CEO. I mean, look, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because neither of us have an appetite for sort of piling on individuals. But one of the things that we've talked about a lot, Kevin, and we've talked about it for a long time, and I don't think we've mentioned it on this pod, and I'm going to mention it now, and it's not a huge issue. We couldn't say it's responsible for all QPR's problems, but it just is always quite telling to me is that the current head of recruitment can very often be found at QPR games. Now, that is a concept that I struggle with. I think someone in that role should be out in the field looking for players. Now, there's an argument to say, A, that someone in that position needs to be familiar with what QPR are doing at all times for obvious reasons, because they need to be familiar with what's required and what the manager's doing and what he's looking for. And also that, there will be other people out potentially doing that job. But even so, I mean, you have a situation, for example, where on nights like the other night where there are EFL trophy games going on, I think you've mentioned this, you've got like kids from Chelsea and whatnot on display. The whole recruitment, again, we've been over this, has just become so data-led that I think, to me, a lot is summed up by the fact that, and this, by the way, was happening even in Les Ferdinand's time, and we did comment on it then as well. Just the fact that, and I think you'll know this, that other people who work in those roles are not necessarily all the time watching their own team. They're out watching others.
I agree. You have to. If you're the head of recruitment, and it's when you're signing off a player, you've got to be 100% right, and you have to see that player. You've got to see that player, I would say, a handful of times live, because watching on a computer is not the same as watching it live. Because on a computer, most games they follow the ball. You don't know what the centre half's doing when the ball's down that end. You don't know what the centre forward is doing when the ball's down that end. If the centre half is organising his back four when the ball's down, you're like thinking, well, he's a leader. He's talking all the time. He's getting in position and things like that. I think you've got to be out on the field. It's data. All this stats and data. Everyone uses it. This is nothing new. Every club in the whole country uses stats and data. But can you do data on courage and desire? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what was the data on Madson's courage? And if you looked at the data on Madson's courage and desire on Tuesday, you'd be like, you would never sign that player. You'd be just giving you can't sign someone like that. And just before we go, we had a left back. I mean, Larkesh, they sent out on loan, who was a left back. But last season, everyone was sort of talking about him, and he's having a decent season up in Scotland. But I've been up in Scotland. I've watched matches in Scotland. Scotland's League One, and that's not to say he ain't a good player. I didn't see much of him last season to say he would be in front of Powell if he was fit. I would pick Powell ahead of him, but he would have been an option at left back. But you need to realise, other than Rangers, well, not even Rangers, other than Celtic, Aberdeen at the moment, Rangers to an extent, the Scottish League is, at best, bottom of, I was going to say bottom of the Championship. That's just killed my argument. But, I'd say mid-table League One.
It's got to be better than having Santos on that side, though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, no, I agree. No, I would agree with that. That's a bit of a mystery, yeah.
All right, we'll leave it there, Kev. Before we go, I did want to mention that I do appreciate all the feedback we have on the podcast, which is mostly very positive. And thanks for that. One of the comments I most frequently hear is that we should do it more often, and we'll try to do that. I would like to incorporate perhaps more questions from the listeners and viewers. I imagine they'll be mostly directed towards Kevin. So you can do that. You can tweet us or send us a post on X, as it's now called, at West London Sport, or at my Twitter. or you can email info@westlondonsport.com, and we'll have a good look through that, and we might incorporate some of your questions. Kevin, I know, is a man who's armed to the teeth with stories and dressing room banter stories and so on. And it's obviously good to get his insight as well. So drop us a line, and we'll catch you again soon.